Welcome. My name's Jeff Bartels. I'm an infrastructure technical specialist here at Autodesk, and today I'm joined by my colleagues Jerry Bartels and Dana Judge. In today's 30-minute workout, we are going to be taking our second look, our Part 2 exploration of the new Project Explorer feature in Civil 3D. If you are unfamiliar with the 30-minute workout concept, I'm sure you'd agree if you've ever taken a Civil 3D course in the past that there's never enough time to cover everything that the application has to offer. Usually, courses focus on the need-to-know functionality. All the remaining tools and features are the type of things that you just pick up on your own over a career using the application. So we put together these 30-minute workouts as a means of giving us an opportunity to demonstrate some of those lesser discussed tools and provide a resource for Civil 3D users to help fill in some of those gaps and make the most of their Autodesk investment. We do have a couple of ground rules. First of all, many of the examples we show are going to be abstract in nature, and we do that on purpose. This way we can focus solely on how a tool works. And once you understand how the tool works, you can apply it in whatever situation works best for you. We also intend to always start on time and end on time because we value your time. Don't worry about taking notes. These sessions are recorded. Anybody who has registered for the session will get access to the recording. Since this is part 2 of the overall session, anybody who registered for this session will also get access to part 1. Let me say right out of the gate, we're going to be making the assumption today that you've already seen the part 1 session. If you have not, don't worry about it. You can still follow along. Don't forget you will get access to that part 1 recording. The agenda. We are going to be picking up where we left off. When last we met, we were talking about comparing civil objects. Today, we're going to look at how we can customize columns for viewing that data a little bit easier. That is going to set us up for the purpose of creating reports. We'll look at how we can create dynamic AutoCAD tables and HTML reports, PDFs. We'll look at how we can export civil content to vanilla AutoCAD. We will also look at how we can automate the exportation of our data into reports and CAD files. And then we will wrap up by looking at some of the preference adjustments that we can make in Project Explorer to customize it better to suit our needs. In the event we get through everything that I want to talk about today, I've also got a topic there called bonus content, because there's always things we can talk about. In the event we don't get to the bonus content, we'll just push that to a future session. As always, this will be a PowerPoint-free zone. We will be working live in the application today for the duration of our time together. Okay, housekeeping's taken care of. Let me say that I'm working in Civil 3D 2021.2, and I have that same subdivision drawing open that we used in the last session. I'm going to bring up Project Explorer. I'll do that by going to the Add-ins tab, and then I'll click to open the application. Now, the last time we got together, we looked at how we could use Project Explorer to view, edit, and compare civil data. Let's mention that the Project Explorer dialog box is divided up into these tabs. Each tab represents a unique type of civil object. And then on each tab, we will find both an object data area and a sub-object data area. Note that the sub-object area may include multiple tabs. Okay, I'd like to start this session where we left off. We talked about comparing data, so I'd like to compare a couple profiles. I'll do that by choosing the Alignments tab. Remember, the profiles live here as well. And I'm going to come down to the Object Data area, and I'll select the Tartan's Drive alignment. I will then tap my Control key so you can see where that alignment is on screen. Just beneath this alignment, we can see a pair of associated profiles. We've got one for the finished grade, and we have one for the existing grade. If I select the finished grade profile, down here under Calculated Stations, it gives me kind of an interval approach to my linear design. At each designated interval, I can see the station, the northing, easting, elevation, as well as other information with respect to this profile. If I drag this over far enough, we'll see some additional columns called Compare To. Depending on the object that I want to compare to, I will see data populate these columns. I would like to compare the finished grade profile to the existing grade. To do that, I'll come up to the Compare To area. Let's open the menu. I'll choose the Tartan's Drive alignments, and I'll grab the existing grade profile. And you can see that I am now seeing the item that I'm comparing to here in the column. I'm also seeing the compared elevation, and if I drag down far enough, I can see the compared offset. Now, this information is fantastic. However, these columns are kind of far apart for them to be very useful for me right now from a design perspective. So I would like to adjust the columns on this particular tab. To do that, I'm going to click the Layout button. When I do, it opens up the Layout Options dialog box. When we click Layout, it basically extracts the column configuration for every tab on every major tab in Project Explorer into this dialog box so I can make changes to them if I want to. You can see the same tabs here that we have up here. So the tab I want to change is this one called Calculated Stations. It happens to be on the Alignment tab, so I'm going to make sure the Alignment tab here is selected. If I come down to the Alignment Profile Column Chooser and expand this shows me all of the possible tabs that I might see on this major tab. Usually the very first one is your object level data. If I select that, we'll see the same columns here that we see here. So I'm interested in the Calculated Stations. Let me expand this. There's Calculated Stations right there. Once again, columns that we see here are the same ones that we see here. Now, any column with a check next to it is currently displayed. I'm going to click this Clear All button to remove all of those, and then I'm just going to select the columns I'd like to see. I'll choose the point index, station, easting, northing. I'd like northing to occur before easting, so I will select that column, and then I'll use these arrows to the right to change their order. I'll just push that up. I would like to see the elevation. Let's come down to the compare area. I'd like to see the compare to item. I would like to see the compared elevation and the compared offset. Now notice that some of these items, in fact all of them over here on the left, are purple, meaning they are editable. So if I want to change the name of the column header, I can simply double click. I'm going to remove this word compared. We'll just have that say offset Z. And I would like to change the order here a little bit more. I'll select the compared elevation and I'll hold my control key and click offset Z. And then we will push these up so that they appear before the compare to item. Now, for the purpose of this example, we're just rearranging the columns or setting the columns we want to see in Project Explorer. Before I leave, though, note that we could also use this dialog box to change the intervals. We could determine whether we'd like to use the intervals or not, or whether we'd like to see additional points or not. We can also use these tabs to change the way items are labeled here within these tabs. So for right now, just dealing with the columns. Let me click OK. When I do, we can see that change right here. So when I've selected my finished grade profile, I can see the station, northing, easting, elevation, the compared elevation, the offset, and I can see the object that I'm comparing to. Now it's important to note that when I adjusted that layout, I did it for one tab, but I could have done it for every tab in the application if I wanted to. Let's click Layout again. Every time I click Layout, it extracts all of the columns from all of the tabs into this dialog box so I can make changes. Here on the Alignment tab, if I expand this and grab Calculated Stations again, you can see this is just the way I left it. This is the way it currently is in Project Explorer. I show you that so I can show you this. You can save layouts such that they can be reused or shared with others. I'm going to click Save, and it's going to save this in my Documents folder as a XMPT file. Now, if I drag down, you can see that I've saved a couple other ones in here already. I'm just going to overwrite this one called Comparing Profiles. I'll click Save, and I'll replace that one, and I'll click OK. So anytime in the future, if I'd like to load that column configuration, I can do that. Now you may be thinking, well, it's already there. How can I go back to like a factory setting if I want to? Notice there's a Reset button. If I click Reset, I can click to reset my layout configuration. I'll select that and I'll click OK. This puts me back to a factory configuration of columns. At any time, if I'm going to be comparing profiles, for instance, and that previous column layout is good for me, I'll click Layout. In the dialog box, I'll choose Open. I'll come down and grab my comparing profiles, and I'll click Open. I'll click OK, and you can see I went right back. So extremely powerful. I can dial this up to be however I want, whenever I want. The nice thing is, once you understand this concept, this is how we create reports. It's the exact same workflow. We determine what we'd like to export, and then we select the columns that we'd like to export. I can export HTML, PDF, CSV. I can export Excel. I can also create dynamic AutoCAD tables that will update whenever my design changes. Let's look at that. I'm going to drag the drawing over, and let's create a dynamic AutoCAD table that reports on the structures in my pipe network. If I select my pipe network tab here, and then come down to the object level area, we can see that I have a single pipe network for the storm sewer. In the sub-object area, we can see 3 tabs. One that contains the structures, one that contains the pipes, and then another one that contains pipe run information. Let's go back to structures. If I would like to create a table to report on my structure information, I am going to come down to this Object Sets tab. An object set is a collection of objects that has an action assigned to it. So in this case, my collection of objects is going to be my pipe network, and then the action I'm going to assign to it, I'm going to say, I want to make a table from this. Generally speaking, that's how it works. So we'll create the object set first. I'll click the New Object Set button, And then I'm going to call this object set structure table in model space. I can give this a description if I want, and then I can come down and choose the action I'd like to apply to this set. And right here, you can see how we can export data from Project Explorer. Text file, comment limited file, HTML, PDF, Word document, rich text file, Excel document, 2D DWG file. I can also create an AutoCAD table in model space or paper space. I would like to create that table in model space. Let's drag this over. When I create the table, I have the opportunity to make that dynamic so that as my design changes, that table will update automatically. That's probably the preferred option. If you wanted to make it manual, however, you could toggle that button, and then the table could be updated in the future by simply clicking the Run Selected Action button. For now, I'm going to make this dynamic. Layout style. What columns do you want to use? Now, we've looked at how to do that. For right now, let's just use the column configuration that's default in Project Explorer. Now we can come over here. Since we're making a table, I can pick the insertion point where I'd like to place it. I'm going to go ahead and drop it right here. I can determine what I'd like in the title cell. Right now it's going to be the object name, whatever object I select, but you can see there's other options here that you can use, or you can physically type something in there if you want to. Finally, table style. What do you want that table to look like? By default, we're going to use the table style that comes out of the box with Project Explorer. I'll go ahead and click OK. So the object set's been created. Now I don't see anything yet because I haven't added any data to it. If we select the object set, we would come down and click this green plus. This is how we can add data to a set. I can now determine who's going to participate in that table. Let's choose the pipe network tab, and then I will select the pipe network and I will click OK. Now if I zoom in, you can see my table data. Whenever we create a table or whenever we export data from Project Explorer, we have the opportunity of exporting both the object level and the sub-object level data. Let me zoom in a little bit closer. So what we see here is essentially the same thing we see if we go to the Pipe Network tab. There's the object data table, and here's the sub-object data table. We're seeing structures. Note there's the two other options there. Let's go back to Object Set. If I select that data that I'd like to appear in the table, you can see right here, I can determine if I have an option for the object data. I could pick a different table. For the sub-object, I do have an option. It's purple. Let me double click. You can see there's the other options there, pipes list or pipe run. If I choose pipes list and click OK, watch the screen. You can see it dynamically updated. Now it's showing me the pipe information. Let me double click and we'll set this back to structures list, and I'll click OK. If I come down a little further, we can see toggles here that allow us to display the object data or the sub-object data. And maybe I don't want to see the object data. I'll double click and we'll turn that item off. When I click OK, you can see the change on screen. Since I am using the layout configuration that came out of the box with Project Explorer, you can see that I've got way more information here than what I want. So let's dial this down a little bit. I am going to double click on my object set. It takes me right back into that dialog box, and we'll come down to the layout style. Rather than using the out of the box or the current column configuration in Project Explorer, this is where I could say I'd like to select a specific style, one that I've pre-saved. We've seen how to do that. This is where I could browse and choose it. In this case, I don't know if I have one I could select, so I'm going to choose Edit Style. I'm going to edit the current columns. Now these columns are on the Pipe Networks tab. Let's expand the column chooser, and I will grab that structures sub-object data table. And you can see all the columns here. I'm going to clear these. And for the structures, for this example, maybe I just want to see structure name, easting, northing. Let's put northing first. We'll push that up. I want the rim elevation, and then let's take this down. Maybe I want the reference alignment, the station, and the offset. That's good for now. I will click OK. And Project Explorer is saying, okay, well, since you're creating a new style here for this table, let's save it. That way you can use it again in the future if you want to. That's fine. I think I've used a name for one of these already. Yeah, we'll just call this standard structure table. We'll overwrite one that I made here already. So now that is the new file, or the layout file that I'm using to control the appearance of this table. When I click OK, we can see that change on screen. So now that particular file, I could share that with others. I could reload that in the future if I want to use it. The nice thing about these tables is that they are dynamic. If I go to my Pipe Network tab, down here at the data area, I can see the name of that very first structure there. Let me double click, and I'm going to rename this. I'll just add some A's there. When I click OK, you can see not only did it change my model, but it also updated that table. Let me change my viewport configuration here. We'll make this 2 horizontal. And then I'll click in this view down below, and I will zoom in on a structure, and I will come over here and zoom in. This structure happens to be the one that I just renamed with all the A's. If I select that and click the grip and move this, watch the northing and easting up above. You can see as fast as I make the change there, it's updating automatically in that table. So that table is essentially maintenance-free at this point. Let me mention one more thing. The updating of this table only occurs when Project Explorer is open. You can see if I close Project Explorer and make the changes, that table does not update. Now that happens for a reason. This way, in the event you have Project Explorer loaded and it's closed, it's not adding any additional overhead to Civil 3D. If I go back to the Add-ins tab and I click to bring Project Explorer up, you can see right away, as soon as that opened, it updated that table. So that table is now updating again with my design. Let's flip this back to a single viewport. And we'll talk about the table appearance itself. I'm going to go back to Object Sets, and I will double-click on the object set. It takes me back into the dialog box. And the only item we haven't talked about yet is Table Style. This controls the appearance of the table. Now, Project Explorer has its own means of creating table styles. So you'll build the table style here. That table style will create a table style in AutoCAD or Civil 3D. That's what it does. So it's all managed here. So I don't want to go with the default anymore. I'm going to either select a pre-saved one that I've exported already, and I haven't done that. So let me click Edit Style. For the Project Explorer table style, this is how we control the appearance. I don't want to use the background colors. I'll toggle that off. Right now, I would like to go with a border color of black. Note that we can adjust things like margins, we can adjust our font, we can adjust sizes or alignment. I would like my text to be black. Currently it's white, so let's make all of these black. And I'll click OK. Since I am creating a brand new table style here, it's asking me if I want to save it. I'm just going to go down and overwrite one I made before. We'll just call this Table Style Standard. That'll work fine. And I'll click OK. And you can see the change on screen. So still dynamic, but I'm able to change the appearance. Now, one thing from production, many times we wanted all caps within these tables. Let's make a quick change. I'm going to double click on my object set, and then I'm going to edit the style that's currently being used. There's a toggle right here. I can force all text to be uppercase. Let's click OK, and we will overwrite that previous table style that I made, and I'll click OK, and you can see the change on screen. So now that we understand this, really, this is the same workflow we would use to export data to PDF or HTML or something like that. Now, if I wanted to export data to HTML, I could create a new object set, and I could add new objects like alignments or points or surfaces or something like that, parcels if I wanted to. Just for the case of speed, I'm going to leverage the object set that I've already made. I'm going to right-click on this, and I'll choose Copy. And then I will right-click again, and I'll choose Paste. So we'll just leverage this one again. Let's double-click, and we'll rename this object set. I'm going to call this structure table as HTML. And then what action do I want to assign to this object set? I want to use the export to HTML. And then what column configuration do I want to use? I'll use the same column configuration I'm using right now. And since I'm exporting this to a file, you can see now we're using the left-hand settings here. What do you want to call it? I'm going to keep the default name, which is the name of the object set, and then the drawing name. You can see there's other naming templates here that you can go with. For the output path, I'm going to keep the default. We'll save it in the same place. And the report style, do you want to go with a different report style? If you look down here, you can see the default settings. I'm going to make a quick adjustment. I'm going to say let's use a specific report style, and I could load one. I've not made one, so let's go ahead and edit it just so you can see that. When we export a report, this first tab controls things like our orientation and our paper size. I'm going to make this landscape, and I'll set this to inches. I can use this tab to control my font. This tab would control the grid. This tab controls the header information. This tab controls the footer. Let's click OK. And since I'm making a new report style here, I can save this. In fact, I may have exported one of these before. Report standard. Let's do this one. There we go. I'll click OK. And now if I'd like to see, or if I'd actually like to run that report, I will make sure this is selected, and I'll come up and choose Run Selected Action. And then it gives me the opportunity to view that file. When I click yes, I can see the result of that on screen. So now I'm viewing my HTML. Here's my header information. Here's my sub-object data information. Maybe with the HTML, I'd like to include the object data information as well. Let's close this. So a little review here. If I select the HTML object set and then come down to the items that are in that set, I can come down and say, you know what? I would like to see the object data in there. So I'll turn that on. I'll select this and choose Run Selected Action, and then we can view it again. And we can see the difference on screen. Fantastic. If I wanted to do PDF, I could make a brand new object set, add new data to it. I'm just going to copy this one and paste it just for speed. We'll change this to PDF. My action is going to be PDF. I'm going to keep the same layout. I'm going to keep the same naming convention and report style. Let's click OK. And then I will run this. I'll select that object set and choose Run Selected Action. We'll click Yes. And now we can see the same data as a PDF file. Let's do one more thing. We talked about how we could use Project Explorer to export our civil objects as 2D AutoCAD drawings. Let's make the assumption that maybe we're dealing with a landscape architect and they've got Adobe Illustrator. And they would like, maybe our parcel geometry and maybe our alignments, maybe our utilities. They'd like some of that as just a base AutoCAD drawing such that they can incorporate it into some marketing materials using Illustrator or Photoshop or something like that. I am going to create a new object set for that. So on the Object Set tab here, I will create a new set. And I'm going to call this Export Objects to 2D DWG. I will then set my action. We'll choose 2D AutoCAD DWG file. When it comes to the layout columns, I'm exporting geometry, so this doesn't matter. File name, I'm going to keep the default. I'm going to keep the default output path, and then I'll click OK. Now let's add items to that object set. Let's click Add. And then they will probably want the parcels. So let's grab the Parcel tab, and then I will select the first parcel here. I'll hold my Shift key, and I'll grab the last parcel, and then I'll click to select all of those, and I'll click OK. You can see that all of those parcels are now members of that object set. Let's click the Add button again, and maybe they would like the alignments. So here on the Alignment tab, I will grab those 3 items, and I'll click OK to add those to the list. Let's do one more. I'll click the Add button, and then I will select the Pipe Network. We'll add that to the list. So if I drag down here, I can see that my object set includes a bunch of items. To export all of this stuff as a 2D AutoCAD drawing, I will just make sure and select that object set, and I will choose Run Selected Action. And you can see in just about 1 second, it created that file. If I click Yes, I can open that up on screen and take a look. So in slightly more than a second, it exported those civil objects and it converted those into generic AutoCAD entities. I've got lines and polylines. I've got text and M-text. I've got blocks and just typical AutoCAD geometry here. So very quick way to create that in the event we have to do that. Let me close this. There we go. Now, first time I started exporting data to reports and tables and things like that, I started asking myself, do I really have to create an object set? I wanted to wrap my mind around why the object set was helpful. Let me show you this. I'm going to go to the pipe networks here. If I right-click on this pipe network, or virtually any object, I just want to show you that in the menu, you'll see these quick options. I can quick report this to a file, like a PDF or a CSV or something like that. And it would be exporting the structures list, which happens to be the current tab here. Or I could quick export this geometry to a 2D AutoCAD drawing. Or I could quick report this to an AutoCAD table in my model. The thing about these quick reports, they're meant to be a one and done. It's the type of thing where you just do a quick export and that's it. You don't intend on doing that one again. In fact, in the case of a table, that is not a dynamic table if it's created via the quick method. The beauty of the object set is that these can be run multiple times. The associations of these sets and the objects are saved with the drawing. So anytime in the future, kind of look at these as deliverables. If your design changes, you can come over here and you can edit your design, and then you have to run deliverables. You just come up and choose Run All Actions. And it will export a new DWG, it'll update the table, and it'll create the new HTML and the new PDF. And then it's saying, do you want to review the results of that in the Output History window? Notice there's a View History here. If I click Yes, it'll bring up that history. And this shows me the history of the items that I've exported. Notice that the ones with the stars are the ones that are current. Those are the ones that just were exported, they're the latest version. If I wanted to see the latest PDF, for instance, I'll just double-click to open that. Okay, so this maintains a history of your deliverables. This isn't saving the actual drawings on this tab. This is just remembering the paths where they're located. Let's close this. We are dangerously close to the top of the hour. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about preferences. How can we configure the Project Explorer to best meet our needs? If I'm in the Project Explorer and come down and click this Preferences button, let me drag this over. This brings up our preferences. Now, there's a ton of settings on here. We don't have a chance to go through all of them. I would encourage you to go through and explore these as much as you can. Just a couple things. We've talked about items that are purple. You double click on them, they can be edited. Here's where you can change that color. Items where there's warnings are red. You can change that color if you want to. You can control the appearance of the tabs that display in the interface. You can ensure that the layout style is persistent or not. This way, if you close Project Explorer and reopen it, it will remember the previous layout configuration. We can jump from tab to tab here, and we can control the colors and the settings of the preview window. For instance, here on the Alignments tab, it's actually the Profile Preview. I could change the background color. That's not 100% black, but I could change that. If I click OK, you can see how that change appears on screen. Let's go back to Preferences. I can do that with all these items. So just a ton of things you can go through and dial up Project Explorer to be or to work exactly how you need it to. Now, if you go through and you booger up your settings, is there a way you can put things back to factory settings? And the answer is yes. There is a Restore Defaults button here, or let me click OK. We touched on the Reset button a little bit ago. I clicked Reset and I said reset the layout. You also have the ability to reset the preferences. So if I click both of these and click OK, I just put Project Explorer back to its initial install configuration. One last thing. I'm going to go into layouts one more time. I just want to show you that in addition to adjusting the columns here, there is a tab all the way down on the end called General. Using this, we can adjust things like decimal spaces for the various measurements that are displayed within Project Explorer. I can determine my format that I'd like to see my grades and slopes. I can edit labels. I can change the way my bearings are displayed. These settings are completely independent of the settings in Civil 3D. This only affects how things are displayed within Project Explorer. Just wanted to show you that that was available as well. Very powerful feature. Let me go ahead and close this, and then I'm going to jump back to my PowerPoints here. So today we looked at part 2 of our discussion with Project Explorer. We talked about how we could customize the layout of our columns using the Layouts feature. We saw how we could edit that and how we could save it and reload those if we wanted to. We also saw that that's the same tool necessary to create our exports, whether we're exporting a AutoCAD table, which we looked at how we could do that. We looked at how we could export data via object set to create HTML or PDF. I would encourage you to go and explore some of those other options as well. Things like the Word document or the Excel document, CSV files. We saw how we could quickly use object sets to export data to 2D vanilla AutoCAD drawings in the event we're asked for that type of deliverable. The object sets are essentially the way that we can automate those exports. You can do a quick export if you want to, but like I said, it's a one and done. By associating that data with an object set, you can export it repeatedly whenever you want to. You could do it on demand. And then the very last thing, we looked at how we could modify and save our Project Explorer preferences such that we can dial up Project Explorer to look and function the way we would like it to. At this point, just based on the time, I'm going to say that if there are any questions left, we will get back to you with answers before our next session. On behalf of Jerry and Dana and myself, I just want to say thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate your time. We hope everybody has a happy and safe holiday season. Let me also mention that this will be our last 30-minute workout for this year. We will be reconvening again the second week in January, so keep your eye open for that invitation. With that, I want to say thank you again, and we'll see you again really soon.